ideas. And I bet you we can do it for profit. And I did. And now I have one of the most popular libertarian news magazines, 1.5 million readers a month, and 1 million listeners to my podcast a month. That's a big megaphone. And I will bring that to this ticket. I will bring that megaphone to this ticket and that activism. I have been a libertarian since 2008, longer than, no offense, John and Mr. Johnson combined. And I promise you that I will serve you honorably and well. Thank you so much for your time, and I won't go on too long. Appreciate it.
Mr. John Mcaffee, the floor is yours.
My name is John Mcaffee. I became a libertarian through being molded by my own life's experiences. I never read any great thinkers. I'm not a great reader. The very first book I read, I was 30 years old. That was Charles Darwin's Origin of Species. I read that book because I was dealing drugs in Mexico, and that was the only English language book I could find. I was arrested, severely punished, and so I understand what our drug laws do to people. Not the first time for drug offenses, by the way. I learned about foreign policy by living in Belize. Someone tried to extort me for $2 million, a member of the Belizean government. I refused. 1 week later, 42 armed soldiers stormed my property, shot my dog in front of my eyes with an AR-15 that was given to them by the State Department. They were trained, by the way, by the FBI in Quantico, Virginia. So I understand the interfering in the affairs of foreign nations is not good for any American, whether you're here in America or abroad. I know the value of personal freedom. I know the value of privacy because I have lost both. If you're ever incarcerated, you will understand what the loss of those two things are, and you will understand how important they are. I know that my body belongs to myself. I learned that through a number of avenues, but most specifically through my wife. My wife was forced into prostitution at the age of 20, beaten, abused, humiliated almost daily, isolated from her family, from her friends, and for 10 years was a virtual slave to a vicious, brutal pimp. I personally rescued her 3.5 years ago. I married her, and she's here in the audience today. I love you, baby. I know that we must keep our contracts because there is no other way to live. I know that we cannot harm one another or take one another's things because I have been harmed so much in my life and I have had so much taken from me. I know all of the libertarian principles not through being tutored by someone or by reading a book, but because life taught me that there are no other principles and all Americans are libertarians. I'm here to admonish us all tonight, if you will allow me to do this. I hear so many times that we really can't win an election, but if we take small baby steps, we will get there. You cannot ever create political change that lasts by taking a step at a time. It is like stretching a rubber band slowly. It will snap back upon itself. If you look at history, all great change happens suddenly, unexpectedly, from quarters that you could least imagine. Das Kapital, I'm not saying communism is one of the worst of all things, but Das Kapital was written in 1867. It was not until 1915 that anyone read the book, and I think the first person to read it was Nikolai Lenin. 2 years later, communism burst suddenly onto the world stage as Russia was turned upside down. That was a violent change. Let's look in 1991, in December of 1991, the reverse happened, and Russia collapsed in a month. From the USSR to a collection of 15 separate states. No more dramatic, non-violent change has ever happened on this planet. We have to all understand, as revolutionaries, it does not matter how small we are, how weak we are, or how powerful our opposition is, if we do not have commitment, and more importantly, conviction, we can't win ever. And if we can't win this year, then we're in deep trouble because there may not be another election here. I'm sorry I went over.
David, is it? It is. Thank you so much, David. As I mentioned, David's here representing Jack Robinson Jr.
Thank you for letting me be here today. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand here today representing presidential candidate Jack Robinson Jr. But I've also been mandated with a second task, and believe it or not, the second task is more important than the first. That task is to spread the birth loop message. What is birth loop? Well, birth loop economics is an innovative economic model that works within the principles of a free market and libertarianism, but also allows us to solve many of the great social and economic problems of our time. It answers the question concerning capitalism: what happens to the individuals who fall between the cracks? Birth loop economics is so great, it will put an end to socialism and be able to unify both conservatives and liberals behind the libertarian cause and our principles. Birth loop economics is an umbrella name for about 8 different birth loop programs. But before I tell you about birth loop, I'd like to make a distinction between the candidates up here on stage. I personally was able to hear most of the candidates speak at the last convention, and to be honest, while they are passionate about libertarianism and freedom and pursuing our cause, I have to be honest, most of them are naive and unfit for office. The distinction I want to make is between common sense candidates and nonsense candidates. And no offense, Mr. Peterson, but I'm going to bring up one thing you said at the last convention. You said, "I cannot wait for the day 2 married men can be strapped with AK-47s and protect their marijuana grow." It's a great tagline, Mr. Peterson, but just how far are you willing to go? Can those married men copulate in their front yard while my 6-year-old little girl is on her private property playing with her friends? How about this? What if there are no laws governing nuclear waste and your neighbor brings some on his property? Before you have time to sue them for damaging your property, which is, I think, your only course of remedy, it's too late. They've contaminated the whole block. My point being, it's not to pick on Mr. Peterson, is that Jack is a limited government candidate who enjoys the Patrick Henry principles of give me liberty or give me death, and would end all victimless crimes as well as deregulate all drugs, treating it as a health issue between a patient and his doctor. Jack does not stand for anarchy and is not for presumptuous folly like Mr. Peterson, who in my opinion is an impractical candidate. I look forward to talking birth loop in my first round of questioning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Certainly appreciate you being here. Judge Gray, the floor is yours. Jim Gray is here to speak concerning Gary Johnson's campaign.
Him and Ellen can be
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
First of all, things like this don't just happen. This is a wonderful convention, and I think Brett deserves a great deal of credit, as well as the staff. Well done. I've seen a lot of conventions, that's on too. I also feel a little bit at home in Georgia. I did, as you heard, write a musical. It's called Americans All, and it was actually performed by the high school at Hawkinsville, Georgia. It's a little south of Macon. I came and watched them, and as I tell folks, only maybe not even half joking, I earned $35 in royalties and spent $500 to come see it. So that would put me as a consultant for the United States Government Finance Committee. So that's good. But I was proud, deeply proud, to be your nominee for Vice President in 2012, along with Governor Gary Johnson for President. You may know my story, I don't have much time, but as a sitting trial court judge, after being a former federal prosecutor, Navy JAG attorney, watching on my own courtroom that our nation's drug policy simply was not working, I held a press conference as a sitting judge back in 1992, stating to anyone that would listen that we'd have to change our nation's drug policies. They're a disaster. The reason I'm bringing that up now is that when I was opening my newspaper in 1999, I saw that, hey, the sitting Republican governor of New Mexico, a guy named Gary Johnson, whom I did not know at the time, has said the same thing. He's conducted his own audit and determined our nation's drug policy is not working and we have to change it. I thought to myself, wow, you know, this is something really important. Somebody who has no political constituency but stands up and tells the truth. And soon they had a drug policy forum in Albuquerque. I met Governor Gary Johnson. So when he was running for president, I started saying the truth from my standpoint, and it still is. He's the most qualified person to be president of the United States I know of. So I guess I said it a few too many times. He asked me to be his running mate. I was, and proud to do so. He is running for president again in 2016. Now, stop for a minute. Look around our country. I will take the position, and I think you would agree with me, that Donald Trump has basically no support, no voters favoring him at all. He has garnered the anger vote. And there's a lot of anger out there, and rightfully so. You know, they want somebody outside of Washington. They're fed up with this polarization, with this, oh, I'm not going to support your party because you might gain something, even though it's a benefit to our country. Governor Gary Johnson is that guy. You know his story? You know, he began his own handyman company out of his own garage when he was in college, turned that into the largest construction company in the state. Ran out of the box for governor of the state of California, New Mexico, never had run before and won, and was very successful working with everybody across the board, but left the state with $1 billion surplus because he vetoed excessive spending and reduced the size of government. That's what we need in the United States of America. I urge you to support the most qualified person to be president I know of in 2016, as a Libertarian, by thunder, Governor Gary Johnson. Thank you.
Shawna, definitely not least, but you are last in this first portion. You have the floor.
I don't take your speaker down.
Well, yeah, that could happen. One thing that was said earlier, that the success of this convention has been attributed to me, it was not me. We had a wonderful ex-com, we had wonderful volunteers, we had a wonderful convention coordinator, Javed, and I certainly appreciate that. We had wonderful support from Akeem. Without them, this convention would not have happened. It had very little to do with me and all to do with them.
Hi, I'm Shawna Sterling. Thank you for having me. And I'd like to go off of what he's talking about these conventions. So I don't know if you guys have heard the latest gossip. I'm pretty sure about this. Now, I could be wrong, but from what I heard, since the time we were all in Biloxi, okay, there were 12 of us there. I heard that somebody tell me if you heard this, over the last 7 days, there have been more Libertarian Party registrations than since 2008. Has anybody else heard that? Okay, so someone else has heard that. What that tells us is, we're doing something right. Now, did you guys get to see the live stream of Missouri, the debate? They had these beautiful banners. They had us up there debating, and they went to do live stream, and there was nothing. We all looked like ghosts. It was horrible, just horrible. But people were watching. Americans were watching. And I'm telling you guys this, I'm going to be seeing these guys a lot more. We're going to lots of different states. And every state that does the little things that these guys and really y'all have done, you're making it easier for us to come up here and fight and debate and put our words out there so that we can bring this party up. Now, I heard a lot of say, Gary Johnson got 9.99%. And I know you all are striving for 5%. But I'm going to tell you something. We have, this year, the perfect storm. And I promise you that. We have the perfect storm. And if we say, forget about the 5%, if we say, come November, the Libertarians are going to take the White House, oh, the Republicans, they are freaked out right now. I'm not joking, they are freaked out. So are the Democrats. And you know why? Because we got Mcaffee, Petersen, I still have my issues with him, and I'm going to say nice things. Everyone here, and we're all in this to win.
My name's Clements.
All right. When I ran for president, I ran, and my heart is because I love our military, and I don't think that we should send 20,000 or 30,000 troops to go fight a war for Obama. I'm against that. But if we have our special forces under our 9/11 authority that not Obama gave them, predates Obama, this is higher than Obama, our Congress gave them, then they have every right to go after our enemies who are plotting attacks against our nation. But that's our special forces, so I'm good with that. But I'm here to support and to advocate for them so that they can do and protect us and our nation. But at the same time, as I'm wrapping this up, don't underestimate what you can do. We need everybody. It's not a me, it's a we, the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate all the introductions, and I certainly appreciate you guys being here. As hopefully everyone can see, we do have a diverse group. We have differences in policy, and I ask that you submit questions to help us determine what those differences are. Again, focusing on policy, focusing on electability, focusing on funding. You determine what is most important to you in selecting a candidate. I've already collected quite a few questions. If I can ask a couple of volunteers to collect questions as they are written down and bring them up, I will continue to add them to our list. First of all, I'd like to go ahead and start with questions that were brought up during the intros. And one of the things that was mentioned by Judge Gray was tapping into the anger of the current Donald Trump supporter. Right now, there is a very good belief and among Republicans, among pundits, that a lot of people aren't supporting Trump because they believe in Trump. They're supporting Trump because they don't believe in anybody else. And my question to the panel would be, what would you do to tap into that anger? What would you do to reach a current Trump supporter? And how would you approach them to give them the idea, to give them the understanding that libertarians are actually the ones that stand for small government or the outsiders, not a billionaire from New York. And we're going to start in reverse order, start down here and work our way back. Shawna? Please do keep your responses to around 2 minutes so we can get through as many questions as possible. Thank you.
Okay, so the deal with Trump, he's an entertainer. We all know that. I look at him and I laugh. Me and my daughter are rolling on the floor laughing when he's saying, oh, little Marco, and oh, lying Ted. I mean, these guys, the Republican Party, they're like little kids watching them look at each other's physical features and tear each other apart. It's just ridiculous. We have to get in there and get someone who can really represent us. But as far as Trump goes, the people are following him because they know the other people, the other candidates, are controlled. They're controlled. They're bought off. They're paid for. And see, I'm not controlled. I don't have a lot of money. I'll get to these debates. Every debate, I don't have all the funds to get to them, but I'm going to get to them. Whether I'm flying, taking Greyhound, sleeping at the state park, I don't care. I'm going to get to them because we have to do it this year. Trump's followers are following him because he's saying what seems to be the right things. I don't think he's genuine about all this stuff. Half of the stuff is just ridiculous and crazy. But he's entertaining. And I really do see him coming down, but we are going to have to continue to debate, fight him, and show the nation that we're serious. We're not just going to try to get 5%. We're going to take the White House.